everyone, and welcome to The Perfect Place to Start. This is a series dedicated to embracing resilience and fostering genuine conversations. I'm your host, Meg Gluth. In each episode, I have the privilege of speaking with remarkable guests who have navigated some of life's most challenging experiences and come out the other side by taking the next step forward. In this series, we dive into topics often left unspoken: mental health, the true meaning of success, navigating relationships, and the full spectrum of life's highs and lows. Our mission is to break the silence around these issues, offering a platform for open and honest dialogue that can inspire and empower us all. The inspiration behind this series comes from my own journey. My experiences have taught me that the darkest moments often hold the greatest potential for growth. Join us as we uncover the powerful stories of resilience, celebrate victories, and learn how to navigate life's challenges together. This is the perfect place to start, and every conversation is a step forward. Hey everyone, it's Meg again. Welcome back to The Perfect Place to Start. I'm joined today by Andrea Anderson. We're here to have a wonderful conversation today about starting places in our lives.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't mind, just for the good of the order, could you introduce yourself in any way that you see fit? Like, it can be your career, it can be
Absolutely
anything you want.
I'm so excited to be here. My name is Andrea Anderson. I am, I am my grandmother's granddaughter. I am my mother's daughter, and I am my niece's aunt. I am a first-generation American. My mom and grandparents came over from Denmark when she was 9 or 10, and I am a grateful, sometimes grown up, and I'm lucky to be here.
I love it. Where did they come to when they came to the United States?
My grandparents landed in Florida.
They landed in Florida?
Yeah.
From Denmark?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a different podcast, but like what a culture shock.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And they had like, my grandfather was came from a family of means, and his accountant had embezzled everything. And so they literally packed everything they could, put it on a boat, came over to the United States to start over.
No way.
Yeah. And my grandfather ended up digging ditches because he couldn't find any work.
So he's rich in Denmark, and then he comes to the U.S.
And dug ditches.
No way.
Yeah, my mom and I, last time we were in Florida, she drove me by the little tiny, they're like seasonal kind of like motels.
Yeah.
But she's like, this is where we lived. Like, we lived in a 1-bedroom little thing, and my grandma and I would walk down and give my dad lunch every day, because like would pack him a lunch. And they finally, put enough pennies together and heard about a Danish community up in Michigan where they finally relocated, which is where my family is now. But yeah.
And so you grew up in Michigan?
I did.
Okay.
Midwest.
That's pretty cool. I grew up in the Midwest too.
How many people from Michigan are like, and I grew up here?
That's right. Always use the thumb. Yes. I live in the part of Michigan that Wisconsin should have annexed. Well,
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining me. So, we've had a chat prior to this. You know that the purpose of this is to discuss the fact that there are in life just a series of like starting places.
Yeah.
Always.
Yes.
And some people would argue that Tuesday is a start from Monday, right? Like there's always a dialogue here, but I'm always interested in those starting places that maybe they're like messy, or maybe we don't want to talk about them, or maybe they're just difficult for their own reasons, and it wouldn't look that way to anybody. Can you think of a starting place in your life that maybe is one of, now you would call it a starting place of transformation for you?
Oh, there's so many. I'm also a member of the recovery community, and so that's a huge, that was a restart for me. This Christmas will be 19 years sober. And so that was one of the literally, like, I love the name of this podcast, because that was one of the things that I learned early in sobriety was like, you can always start over.
Yeah.
And you can't, like in a moment, you can take a breath and go, can I start that over?
Right.
Can I start that sentence over? Can I start today over? And I love the fact that that was something I didn't know you could do. I thought that if you had messed up, that it was messed up forever and you were screwed. And like, I love the fact that we as humans get to take a deep breath and go, that's not really how I wanted to show up, or I can, I can do it differently. So I've had a lot of grace and had a lot of start overs. I have had some not great relationships. I've had different career trajectories. I feel like I've lived like 20 different lives. So the start over point, you and I had talked a little bit about, starting over in careers, starting over in marriages or divorces, or what that feels like. And I think probably one of my favorite start overs was a car crash.
Tell me about it.
I do also want to say that when we start over, I just want to remind, I think I need to say it out loud for me, but I also feel like this is a thing. We're never alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like we're never, there's always, I believe in a higher power, but I also know that we have no idea. I think you and I are pretty dynamic humans, and we have a lot of impact on humans that we may not even know about.
Yeah.
And like, we're never alone when we start over. There's
True.
always community, and there's people who you may not even know that you touched are like, I see you.
Yeah.
So I want to also make sure that we remember that it might feel like it. And I'm a recovering Catholic, so I don't want to go down that one, there's only one set of footprints. It was me holding you. Yeah. Much respect to people who believe, but I'm like, I would not be where I'm at, no matter how many start overs, without my community, without my chosen family, I just wouldn't. Like and as I get older, I realize I am I think I said this the other day, which is funny as an alcoholic, I am the sommelier of my life. Like, it is up to me to curate who I let in and who I don't. And so it is literally my job to make sure that when I start over, when I mess up, that the people I allow in are healthy for me. And I did not have that growing up. I did not have a lot of that when I was younger.
There's so many things to hit here. I want to talk
I do want to talk about like a start over, but I have been thinking about this, and I'm like, it's not just me. There's grace in being able, like the women in recovery particularly, who gave me grace and space to start over and to learn how to live life without a substance. Like, that start over was, chef's kiss and hard as shit. Yeah. I mean, it just was.
For sure. Been there.
But I'm like, this is the community or I wouldn't be here.
Do you remember the first day you got sober?
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Oh, what a shit show. I had been trying, I was married to somebody who was an addict and who was not great. And, you choose the love you think you deserve. Yeah. And I had been trying to be dry, not even realizing that I really had that big of a problem. I come from a family of human beings who also struggle with alcohol. And I had been trying to just like not drink, no big deal. I just won't drink. Mm-hmm. And I was going through divorce and going through all the things. And I was what a lot of people in recovery call dry, which means that you may no longer have a substance in your body that has made you feel like you could deal with life. But it's like, you don't have anything else either. You don't have support. You don't have love, like self-love. You haven't done anything to like change the actual problem, which is you having a hole. Mm-hmm. Like I have a phrase above my desk that says, I was never addicted to one thing. I was addicted to filling the hole within me. Yeah. And so, that is that's an entire podcast in itself. But like, I had been dry for months and I was miserable and going through a whole bunch of stuff and got some bad news. And I ended up going, and it was Christmas Eve. And I ended up going to my family's house for Christmas Eve, and went over and I'm like, I need a drink, and my family was like, yeah, you know where it is, huge liquor cabinet, and I was like, and they knew that I hadn't been drinking, but they were like, oh, that's just a phase she's going through, and so I drank that evening, and it didn't make it better. Yikes. Which is the first time because like alcohol is a soother. I mean, whether you have an issue or not, alcohol is one of those things. It's like, God, I just need to drink. Like, it takes the edge off it. Like, it literally is toxin that is affecting your brain and making you feel a little softer, a little fuzzier, a little nicer. Makes you not pay attention too much to all the stuff that isn't working. And I drank that night, and I was like, oh, I don't feel better. This
Yeah.
is effed up. And then I was like just shy of terrified. I was like, oh my God, the thing that used to like help me get through life is no longer working. And life is really, really hard. And I don't know where else to go. And so I went to the next day, Christmas Day, I went to the Alano Club, which is, for those who don't know, like is usually in many communities, like a location of like where you can go to a meeting. You can meet people who are also, you know, struggling or not, or thriving, and get to see that recovery can be filled with joy.
Right.
And there was during holidays are really, really hard for alcoholics and addicts. And so there's a thing called an alcathon where they have meetings all the time. And I got to go, and the women who had been seeing me just, you know, kind of dip my toe in were there, and they were like, oh my God, what's wrong with you? And I just lost it. And I, you know, and I was like, oh my God. And I drank, and I've been trying not to. And they're like, they loved me with a fierceness I had never felt before. And I didn't know it was possible. And they didn't really know me.
Right.
And God forbid anybody really knew me. But I got a start. I got 19 years ago, I got another start.
Was it 19 years from that day?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you walk in and you don't relapse from that point.
Mm-mm.
Tell me a little bit about like when you walked in that day for that first meeting.
Yeah.
Did you know, like, this is it, I can't do this anymore ever again?
Oh, no. Oh, no. I just needed a little help.
Yeah.
Like in my brain. I'm like, I just need a little help to get over this rough bump.
Yeah.
I'll be fine.
Yeah.
It never occurred to me that I was, at that moment, it never occurred to me that I was an alcoholic. An alcoholic is somebody like my grandfather, who, when he drank, became the meanest man on the planet. An alcoholic was somebody who was under a bridge. An alcoholic was somebody who was holding a bag of something.
Right.
I was not an alcoholic.
Sure.
I just drank too much and made bad relationship choices and all the other things that I did.
Yeah.
And it would be fine. I'd be fine in a little while.
Yeah.
And then I realized in like the first few years, I was like, oh no, like I am, like this is, like I'm I'm an alcoholic.
You said the first few years. How long do you think it took you to realize that?
To concede?
Yeah. To surrender to that.
I think I faked it. Like, it's like, you know, there's a lot of people who in recovery are like, you fake it till you make it. And you just kind of like you trudge. And it's like, you do it anyway. You do it scared. You do it defiant. You do it whatever, because it's also, I think, one of the largest, longest running behavioral modification programs out there. I mean,
Yes.
It truly is a stabilizing, bit by bit, you like show up sober. Like I learned how to go to a football game sober. I learned how to go to a wedding. I learned how to show up at an after work function and not have alcohol in my hand and like still be okay. So I think that it took a while. And yet I was so desperate at that time. And I think desperation is a gift. I was so desperate at that time that I was willing to do whatever it took to not feel what I had been feeling when I drank and it didn't work. And then I was so miserable and I didn't know what else to do. And I, and I was willing to submit to whatever it took. And so the program, and I'm not saying that AA is for everybody. and this is me, and I am just a member, and it's supposed to be anonymous anyway. And so I'm just saying my personal experience of walking the walk was the fact that those human beings in those rooms gave me so much grace and room to start over. And what I also love is that I would see people come back. I would see people who had years of work and sobriety, and they'd go out because they'd forget, or they would think I'm fine, or like me, they'd be like, I'm okay, I can have a drink, like, or they'd like, I have a very blessed life. Like I would travel a lot and I'd go to work stuff, and it would be always in the back of my mind going, you could probably have a glass of wine. You'll be fine. Like you could like,
no one will
know. Like you're in Vegas or you're in or whatever, where in Chicago, wherever I was, like, like nobody, like none of these people know.
Right.
Like you could just.
Do you remember what you felt like though? That when you finally like conceded, like, do you remember like what's the moment before and the moment after that concession? Like, what's the difference in the way you'd feel?
Oh, I can't tell you that because I keep having that revelation.
Yeah. Say more about that.
I'm a stubborn wench. And so it takes a lot to get me to change and acknowledge there has to be a lot of pain.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it can be emotional, it can be whatever. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of stuff that happens to me when I'm like, oh yeah, maybe I should turn left here.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot for me to like, well, no, I think I'm on a good path. And like, people and therapists and whatever can be like, are you?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think even just, like in the past year, I've questioned whether or not I'm an alcoholic because life gets good. And then you kind of like, you go and you're like, I could probably have a drink. And then you think somebody said in a meeting one time that he has like every year gives him one more second of pause.
Yeah.
So he's like, every year and he's like, and I really appreciate how he sees things. He's completely agnostic. And so I love that part as well. And he's like, it's almost like I get to watch myself having these thoughts. And he's like, that's a gift as well. Like being a little bit removed from the urgency or the drive or whatever it is that makes you want to not be fully present because you're like uncomfortable or anxious or scared or whatever it is that you want to change how you feel. And in our society, alcohol is an easy lift. Like it's everywhere.
It is.
And it's an easy, like you can feel better within like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And so I have to keep reminding myself, I'm like, oh no, when you drink, your world falls apart.
Yeah.
Remember that. When you drink, you make really bad choices that usually involve other human beings, that usually involve massive amounts of apologies and amends. And sometimes you destroy lives. So let's remember that when you are, when you're out there, that I'm a better human today.
Right.
The concession keeps happening. I think I keep having moments in life that give me the opportunity to remember.
Right.
There's a phrase I think that you've probably heard or other people have heard that my disease wants to kill me, but it'll settle for a lot less. It'll settle for me forgetting. Yes. It'll settle for me being lonely. It'll settle for me questioning everything that I think I believe. And so I have to remember that I forget things, which is a funny sentence to say, but I will forget. I can't believe it's been 19 years. I can't.
Yeah.
I cannot. And it hasn't. Let me just be clear. It's 18 years and however many months.
Yeah.
But I will forget and I'll be like, oh, I'm fine. And then I get to go back to talking to other women who have held space for me. And they're like, let's look at some of that inventory.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's remember what you used to be like.
For sure.
Let's remember how many lives you destroyed. You want to go back to that?
Right.
You want to have that again, you're old? Nope. Hard pass. So then the other part is, what is the actual behavior modification? Like, what is it that I have to change to not feel like this? Because if I take alcohol or whatever substance off the table as a solution to feeling like shit, then what is it that what's available? What else is available? And what are the things I have to learn how to do in my life? And so that's the behavior mod. Like now I work out. Now I have therapy. Now I have friends who are healthy and don't drink. Now I have people in my life who are kinder. Like it's like being that curator of your world. You're like, I have to take full responsibility, and it's effing hard.
It is
to be a healthy human.
Because I don't know if we're always addicted to alcohol as much as we're addicted to like not being in
That's the
this.
thing.
Right. I mean,
not being inside this skin.
That's right. And whatever this moment is, I'm not into this moment. Do you think that in your 19 years, like, is the gift as much like freedom from the bondage of wanting alcohol, obviously, because there's a physiological component here for sure. Mm-hmm. Or do you think that this has resulted in you like in more tolerance for like whatever the given moment is? Like sadness, grief, a football game, a wedding, like.
I mean, both, all. It's
right.
So many gifts that are probably unimaginably, I probably don't even have enough ink to write them. It's the gift of knowing I'll be okay.
Yeah.
It's that thing of like, oh my God, I can't handle this. Yes, you can.
Yeah.
It's the thing of like, I can't get through this without, I can't handle this. I can't, like all the things that truly your soul who's looking, that is looking for comfort and love and support and lightness. And it's like, no, you're going to be okay. Like,
Right.
you're going to be like that thing of, okay, you've been okay for 19 years. You're going to be okay today.
Right.
And remembering the fact that if they're also humans, there's also tools, there's also things I've learned that I can rely on and pull into. So it's that thing of, humans are pleasure seekers. And so it's also acknowledging the fact that we are not always taught how to handle the hard stuff.
Yeah.
And if you came from a family that didn't handle the hard stuff well, and that's your mapping in your brain, it's also like two things. Like one of the things that I've learned that I love, the book that I give to everybody, and my entire exec team has it, and actually my entire leadership team has it, it's a book, it's a tiny little book. It's called The 4 Agreements.
Yeah. I love that
And
book.
it's just like how we were raised doesn't mean that's how we have to live.
Right.
And that's probably the worst summation, but it's just a really good book. And I also had this revelation with my best friend the other day where I said, I think I was watching with my niece, with my 10-year-old niece. We were watching the Pixar movie Inside Out.
Yes.
And she's like at that perfect age, and the movie was perfect. And she said that, and I was sobbing. And I had a moment where I'm like, oh God, every Pixar movie is, for me, hard to watch because it's so much more real. Like I was raised on Disney, where it's like everything's perfect and it's totally fine and it's going to be fine, and the bad person is like, oh, truly evil, and they're vanquished. And in the Inside Out, you're like, no, you have to have emotions to get there, and you're like, oh. So I love the fact that we have young people who are now having that as an opportunity to like, oh, life can be shitty, and it's okay.
Right.
And I don't know. It's just like, that's that piece of taking a deep breath. And also, however, I keep trying not to be embarrassed by this, but the dorkiness of what I do in therapy and how I show up as a grown up, and how I'm like, my parents, great humans, also didn't have great upbringings, and they did the best they could, right?
Right.
Both of them. And I believe that today, and I've come to peace with a lot of shit. And the training that we all have as like the human beings of like, oh, I don't really like that.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to forgive them and being able to forgive yourself.
Right.
And also being in therapy and having a therapist who is helping me talk to my little Andrea. And it's like sitting there, and he will, and it's easy. It was an easy lift because he's like, well, would you say any of that stuff to Tova, which is my niece? Which is my niece. And I was like, oh, I'd never talked to her. He's like, why are you talking to yourself like that? And I was like, okay, you can go, like, bye.
Yeah, back up.
But he, now I'll think about, okay, what does little Andre need? Kindness, love, support, grace, allowance.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, oh, I should offer that to other people too. And that actually is a huge piece of how I lead. So as a leader, as the jobs that I've been privileged to have, like, I am so hyper aware of my own inclinations for perfectionism and overachieving and one more itis and all the things that we're taught as not only women in society, but that I learned would make me lovable. Was like, if I was just this, that I'm also get to turn around and show like trudge and also hold space for. I have amazing human beings I get to work with every day, and I get to like share all the messiness of everything that I get to share with them. Like, here, like, you can take a breath. We're good. Like,
do you think that your own journey through sobriety and sort of, there's two kinds of sobriety for people who don't know. Like, there's physical sobriety, meaning I no longer crave this substance, whatever it is. And then there's emotional sobriety, which is, I think, a lifelong battle, frankly, for every human being. Step one of the 12 steps is that, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. Yeah. And I chuckled, I too am a recovering alcoholic. I chuckle because I'm like, powerless over alcohol and really everything else.
Right.
And my life is frequently unmanageable, but the distinction now is that I'm not drinking about it.
Right.
How do you think your emotional sobriety and your quest for that impacts your leadership?
Oh, it's everything.
Yeah, say more about that.
My wanting to be a better person, and I'm not talking about like a perfect person. I'm like my wanting, like the basis of the 4 Agreement book of realizing that all the things I had agreed to as a member of my family of origin were not necessarily paths I wanted to continue. Like I no longer believed this was true or that was true. And then so trying to replace those with different belief systems and different paths and different ways of showing up in the world. And knowing that I'm not the only one like me on this planet. And knowing that when I show up as authentic, when I show up as vulnerable and just me, and some days a hot mess, and some days, I stick the landing, and everything in between. Like I allow, like that poem from Marianne Williamson, The Light, where it's like your shining allows other people to shine. Like I believe that. So how I show up allows other humans, particularly I think humans who identify as female, which is me. Like I see, like our world is effing hard on women. We just beat them to shit.
Yeah.
And then, but you have to be perfect too. Like, and all the things. So I feel like in business, I'm a CEO and I get to show up as this version of a CEO. I'm not saying it's the ultimate. I'm saying it's this version.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit softer and a little bit kinder. And that doesn't mean that I'm not hard where I need to be hard.
Right.
But it's holding space for the other women that I'm surrounded with who are trying so desperately to get over their imposter syndrome and their perfectionism. And there's, they're younger, they're not quite as where I am at my career. And I'm like, okay, take a deep breath.
Yeah.
And I insist on that. So when I'm working with my exec team, I'm like, okay, you seem to be really hard on yourself today. What's going on?
Yeah.
And I hold space for a more human exchange as opposed to the more, here's your KPIs, here's this, what the hell happened with this? Why are we not further, kind of a thing.
I think it's a hard thing to do as a CEO. Somebody told me once
hard.
that the tension of being a CEO is that I need to be with you, but not among you.
Oh, it's the hardest.
How do you maintain that sense of having like authenticity and that shared humanity? Because we are all just humans having a human experience, and there's no such thing as like in that, right? Where there's no such thing as like where we are in the hierarchy. But when you come to work, there is a hierarchy.
Yeah.
And there is somebody who's the boss.
Yep.
How do you ride that line between like, I want to be authentic with you, I want to hold space for your humanity, but also where are your KPIs and where are you in meeting them? How do you do both of those?
Just like that.
Well, tell me what that looks like, because I'm struggling. Teach me. No, I mean, I think we all want to be authentic, right? But I want to be with you, but not among you. How do we do that gracefully?
I think I break a lot of rules that are not rules. I think I just show up as myself. I think I've gotten to a point where I can during my recovery, I can no longer be, I used to call it Barbie plastic, and like, God, I love that movie. And I cried, I sobbed through it. But I used to call, decades ago, I used to call my Barbie face. I'd be like, okay, are you on? Are you coiffed? Are you done? Are you lipsticked? Are you done? Are you ready? Are you to handle the world? And it's also like your armor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just cannot not be authentic anymore because it hurts. It hurts my soul. And then I look at how I showed up and I'm like, oh, that's not how I want to show up. And I can't live with grief or shame anymore because it's toxic. And so I'm just me. Like I'll show up. Here's an example. So as you can tell, I swear, and this is actually light for me. It's a joke where I work that my team has now made it into a fundraiser. So every time I drop an F-bomb, it's $25. Or every time I say something, they will, everyone laughs, and it's actually true. Like I've given thousands of dollars back to my organization. It's like, yeah, okay, here's my check. I'm going to try to be like careful. There's a team of people who are a little who do a little bit more mechanical and outdoorsy stuff, and they also swear a lot. And so when I'm with them, I'm just me. I'm like, what did you do with this and blah, 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 blah. And there may be an F-bomb in there. But I'm also like, I give them all hugs. And I also like ask permission. I'm like, can I, may I give you a hug kind of a thing. I'm just me.
Mm-hmm.
but I'm also in a really big position of privilege to do that.
Yeah.
And
Say
so
more about that.
I check in all the time with my staff. I'm like, hey, I'd like us to, how are we feeling about this? How are you doing? I'll do a lot of one-on-ones and be like, hey, I noticed this and this. What kind of additional support can I offer you? What do you need right now? I'm sending you, whatever, because life happens. Like, you may be an employee for this company,
right?
But the rest of your world is like, that's more important.
It's true. And you said something really interesting, like leadership is a privilege, and especially the top spot.
Yep.
Very privileged spot.
Yep.
Also probably the loneliest spot I've ever been in my life. And probably a pretty lonely spot for you.
Yeah.
Right?
It is.
I've never met another CEO who's like, man, this is awesome. I feel really, I feel really the camaraderie up here.
It's hard.
How do you, because this is, I think, loneliness is one of those things that like alcohol and addiction is also like really great for helping handle, right?
Oh, it's so healthy when you're lonely. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So how do you manage that? Like you definitely like hit on how it is to connect to your team, but like there are those moments where you are decidedly disconnected.
It's been a learning curve. I also there's hard lines in the sand for me. I don't connect with my team on social media. I don't go out with them when they're like, hey, let's go out and grab a drink or let's go have dinner. I'm like, nope, you need space without the boss. And I need you to have that space.
Mm-hmm.
I have very strong boundaries when I travel with my team. Like there's like separate spaces, and I'm a very kind of like, what is it? A Labrador, like puppy or whatever. Like I'm a very touchy-feely, like I care about you as a human, but I'm also going to be like, nope, here's the rule, and I have structures in place with meetings with my team and stuff. But I have met with particularly other women CEOs, and it's the same, like what you just said. We're all like, oh my God, I'm so lonely. I don't have. And so I've talked about starting like a cabal of women, just particularly women, because I think we have an additional layer of crap. But like leaders, because you can't confide in your team.
No.
You have a board of directors if you run a nonprofit or even a for-profit that you can't not be totally seen as handling it by them. I learned very early in my CEO that I made one wrong move and was at a grocery store. I won't even say where. And I had like sweats on and I bumped into like 3 donors and I was like, oh shit. Hi. Yeah. And they're like, you okay? I'm like, I'm good. It's just a Saturday. But I didn't at that time. I was like, I'm good. I just worked out, trying to put myself back together. And I like, it's lonely. And so I will say that I have used, I've used my mom as a sounding board. I have a best friend, ride or die, that she's on lockdown. She doesn't know half the people I'm talking about anyway. So you have to have safe spaces. Yeah. And there has to be a line. Right. I don't know how to describe that other than like, it's an ongoing practice for me to be like, I of course want to be myself and authentic and show up. And when I'm at events or when I'm at a fundraiser or when I'm like on a panel or whatever, I show up, I do want to be myself, but I also there's only so much I'm going to let you inside. That's right. My house is very much my sanctuary. I don't have people over. Yep. Which makes me sad because there used to be a place in my time in my career where I would have like dinner parties and this, and I'm like, no, my world is, I do not know what a 40-hour work week looks like. And so when I get home, it's me and my dog. And I was like, okay. And I rarely watch TV, and I probably won't have music on because I'm just decompressing all day long. Right. And so I have to have safe space where I can just like be myself and eat popcorn out of a bowl or whatever, and not be the role that I am in complete privilege to have right now. Right. But I have to have a place that's sacred. And so that's also making my home my sanctuary has been a huge, like, I know CEOs who like will have their teams over or will, and I was like, I don't even want my staff knowing where I live. Like, it's not that that sounds curmudgeonly, but I'm like, no, I have to have that line. Yes. Yes. And my team needs me to have that line because if not, like, it's a running understanding between and I've said it at an all staff. I said, okay, I have like 2 or 3 non-negotiable, like I will be where you need me to be. I will talk with communities, like wherever you need me to be. But there are non-negotiables on my schedule. Like I have therapy every Thursday at 3.
Yeah.
Nobody moves it.
Yep.
I talk to my niece in Michigan every Monday at 4:30 because it's bedtime, and
Yep.
nobody moves it. And there's another one. And I'm now trying to incorporate like working out as a non-negotiable, although I will say I have moved a couple. But like I'm trying to also carve out lines where I'm like, I am not just this role, which can be all consuming.
It can.
Because I'm also recovering still from all of frankly, the white savioristic expectations of what it means to show up in business, and like this perfectionism, this overachieving, and the timeliness, and all the things that happen. It's like I'm also trying to hold space with like, and I said earlier that I have a terminal case of one more-itis. Like I always think.
Tell me what that is.
Oh God. One more thing, one more meeting, one more call, I can cram one more, I can see one more person, I can have one more impact. Like it's so important for me to give back.
Right.
And so often I will be like, oh no, I can. And frankly, my chiefs have all kind of not held an intervention, but they're like, we need you to get a hold of your schedule.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cause you're going to burn out, and we need you not to burn out.
Yeah.
And it's even hearing it from them, you're like, oh, yeah, I'm not showing up in a way that I'm trying to also hold space for you to show up. Like you're seeing me, even if I'm being kind, I'm like, oh, go take care of your family. They're seeing me work like 80 hours, which is, it's
something doesn't match.
Right. So it's, trying to be protective. I think that's the other thing is learning I don't know where I learned it. I don't want to say it's recovery, but I am now way more protective of me.
Right.
I didn't used to be. I used to give myself away indiscriminately to causes or meetings or people or events or whatever, because there's also that part of me that felt I was still proving myself, or there was this thing of like FOMO. If I'm not there, I'm going to miss it. But I am now most of the time, I am now incredibly protective of I am the only one.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that as like, I'm the best or I'm the CEO, but I'm the only, this is the only machine. This is it. This frame, this soul, this heart, this machine is the only one there is. And if I don't take care of it and protect it, what's the point?
So how does one go about doing that? Because I think whether you are a CEO or whether you were a teacher coming home after the day, or a nurse or just whatever. Like, I think this concept of protecting ourselves and protecting this resource is, that can be really hard, right? Because in some places, like in the culture I grew up in, I'm not talking about my family, I'm talking about like the community, the culture, the Midwestern culture of like giving of yourself and being consistently selfless was like next to godliness, obviously.
Absolutely.
And so this concept of giving to yourself and only to yourself and protecting yourself feels a little bit selfish.
Yes.
And a little bit like antithetical to what we're striving to be. So how do you work that out in your head? Like
it's an ongoing thing. It's because I was also raised Midwest. I was raised where you went above and beyond. You made casseroles for whatever. And and also raised Catholic where you were, being selfless was the ultimate, it's like, and it's, so again, it goes back to that. What are the agreements? What are the things that I was raised with that I'm like, I can't agree to that anymore. I cannot for my soul agree to that anymore. And so if I'm no longer saying that is a level or a value I have, then what values do I have? And why is it, why? And so it's, all the things that society tells us. And yes, we're swimming in the soup, but also like I feel like sometimes, this is going to sound bizarre. I feel like sometimes I'm trying to deprogram myself while still in the cult.
Yeah. Can you say more about that? Like, because I think I know what you're saying. Like, you're making new agreements.
Yeah.
You have commitments to yourself.
Yeah.
You have aspirations
and yet
for how you want to treat yourself.
Against a society. Well, I'm sorry, Andrea, why don't you drink? Oh, yeah. What? No, it's just one. Oh my God. It's mostly punch. Just have it. I'm like, no, I'm good. Why does me not doing something, whatever it is, make you so uncomfortable?
Right.
Why is it so important that we conform to whatever look, appearance, showing up, work ethics, whatever, in order to make society happy? I don't care about society in regards to its judging of me or expectations of me. And I think that's a new place that I got to, because I was crippled by thinking I had to be perfect in all these things and societally approved of whatever. I mean, even to the point of like how I show up at work or how I am, what I dress. But it's trying to, maybe it's a midlife crisis. I don't know. Trying to look at the world in a way that you're like, okay, none of that's real. I guess somebody made all that crap up.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a Madison Avenue expectation or rules for engagement in a discussion or the Midwest. How many times do we say goodbye before you leave someone's house?
100.
I mean, like,
first we slap our legs
and, go,
and rub them and whelp. Gives the hint that we're going to start warming up. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's looks across the room. You ready? Okay, we're ready.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah.
It's been great.
Because I don't want you to feel bad about me leaving.
Then there's the kitchen stop, and then there's the door stop, and then there's the car stop, even if it's
true.
snowing.
It's so true.
But I mean, all the rules we agree to I feel like I'm waking up more and more and more. And I think a lot of the younger generations now are way ahead of all of us. But I feel like at this place in my life as a human being who identifies as a cis female in the society that we're in, I'm like, wait, how did I agree to all this crap?
Yeah.
It's such a mix of not only the four agreements, but it's a mix of what is it? There's an old cartoon, Bugs Bunny, where he's burrowing underground and he comes up and he's like, I must have taken a wrong turn, like at Albuquerque or something. And I was like, how many wrong turns have I taken that have been imposed on me by society? Well, you should. Like you ought to. Let's actually, like, don't be too loud. I'm 6'2". And I've been 6 foot since I was 8th grade. And so, like, I've always been too loud, too big, too tall, didn't fit. And I have had many revelations in my life. I think I had a lot of them on my 50th birthday where I was like, I don't fit in society, but I don't need to.
Right.
Like, I don't fit. Like, I had a whole epiphany. I was visiting family in Hawaii. And I had a whole epiphany because it's kind of dumb, but I went into a store and I was looking for like a bathing suit and nothing fit me. And I was like in tears because I was also in the middle of the end of a divorce. And I was like, and I sat on the beach and I was like, well, of course it doesn't fit you. It wasn't made for you.
Yeah.
And then I think about all the other things that I've been trying to fit myself into, both physically, like airplane seats and cars and shoes that were made for you that were never made to make your life better.
Right.
And why we have decided it was okay to conform. And I'm like, how much of my life have I tried to squeeze myself into because somebody else thinks that I ought to? And so I'm like, screw it. I'm no longer going to, even like from the silly of like, I'm no longer buying clothes that don't fit in the hopes that maybe one day I'll figure out how it can look good on my frame. I'm no longer agreeing to have relationships. I'm no longer agreeing to show up at work in a way that doesn't feel authentic.
Right.
But it's taken me, and still takes me.
Do you know, like, could you share, like, what are some of your new agreements?
My new agreements. Kindness is a big thing. I don't want to hang out with people who aren't kind.
Yeah.
And that goes to like how you treat people who are service workers, to everything. I'm really trying not to apologize for who I am.
Yeah.
That's a new agreement for me, that I'm trying not to say sorry.
Yeah.
I'm really trying to hold space for little Andrea to ask for and to be heard for what she wants and needs as a soul. I no longer have meetings before 8:30 in the morning because I'm truly not a morning person, and I don't care how many CEOs are and run 8 miles before 4 a.m.
Yeah.
That's not how I lead.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I'm trying to curate the life I want.
Right.
It's like, if you don't find what you want, then make it.
Right.
A friend of mine and I were talking a couple years ago about there's no safe space for women executives. So we talked and kind of brainstormed around what would it look like if we created like a retreat for women executives to like go and get a space where they can just literally fall apart and then come back. Like, I'm trying to create that space.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know if I'm like, I refuse to settle.
Yeah.
I'm not settling for jeans that don't fit. I'm not settling for relationships that don't fit. I'm not settling for anything at work that doesn't really ring true to the vision and mission. I'm not settling ever in my life anymore. I've settled a lot. I've settled for decades because, I thought that's what I deserved, or I thought that was enough, or, I've talked with another human in my life who's very important to me, and we joke about the fact that one of my core wounds is like, I'm too much.
Right.
Like, I take up too much. I'm too loud. I'm too big. I'm too this. I'm too, and I've always been that way. And I'm like, no, I'm just enough because it's me.
Yeah.
So how can I be too much? It's just me.
Right.
It's just me being whatever it is. And I'm very effusive, and I'm very gregarious, and I'm very, but I'm kind of tender. Like, it was a joke. Like, I'm such a big person. Like, I was, everyone's like, oh, you're so tough. And I'm like,
yeah.
Actually, I'm very tenderhearted.
Right.
And I have to show up as a boss. So,
right.
Don't get that twisted. I will.
Right.
But I'm also very soft.
Right.
And trying to just be that authenticness and show people that you can be all, not both, because nothing is linear. Nothing is bi.
Right.
And you just be yourself. And I'm trying to hold space, particularly if all I do is with my friends and my family and my niece. And then like the people who have influence over work, if all I do is show up as my authentic self and give them permission to show up as their authentic self, and we change the world like that,
right,
that's enough.
Right. So 2 questions for you as we start to sort of wrap this up. Number 1, less serious. What's your favorite casserole? Because you're from the Midwest, I have to know.
Okay, so when I got sober, I realized I could no longer have wheat. I don't know.
Right.
It just was a whole reset. So I do miss specifically my mom's stroganoff. So it's
I love stroganoff.
It's with the noodles,
the egg noodles.
Yes.
I do miss
feeling
it.
You. Yeah.
I'm feeling
I
that.
do miss that. I've not ventured to. I mean, there's something about it, and like, I could eat my body weight in like my mom's struggle. Like, but I was also like a skinny kid swimming growing up. So I was, probably in a calorie deficit most of my life.
Okay.
What about you?
I do like the beef stroganoff.
Yes.
But my mom and grandmother both made this chicken and noodle casserole with like the homemade noodles. You know what I'm talking about? Like they're a little bit thicker.
No.
I
grew up really
good.
weird because I grew up Danish.
Yeah.
And so
we're Norwegians.
So like homey meals was like smorgasbord. Like we would have like brown bread and butter and like
100%.
herring and all that stuff.
In my family, we only ate things that were like white and had saturated fats with them. But that's a different podcast. Final question, a little bit then more serious, pivoting back that. If you were to go back to that self that's in that first meeting, or even that first awareness, like, okay, I'm an alcoholic. It's a launching point. It's a starting point.
Absolutely.
Knowing what you know today, what would you say to her then?
I would just tell her she's enough. I would try and convince her that. I would probably ask her if I could give her a hug and then just not let go.
Yeah.
I would just try and, I don't know, probably I don't know. 20, what was I, 30 something? I don't know, however many years ago it was. And I was so brittle.
Yeah.
I was so like just holding it together like this.
Yes.
And I was, terrified that anybody was going to find out. Whatever they were going to find out about me. So I would be like, okay, I got you.
Yeah.
I think I say that a lot. That 2 things I say is like, most people, they just need to be seen.
Yes.
And I think that sometimes we do a real poor job of that. And so I feel like, and I say to my team, I'm like, everybody needs an attagirl. Like everyone just needs like a little pat on the shoulder of like, you're okay. You can't see it right now because you're so stuck and you're so fear-based, but you're okay. Yeah. It's gonna be okay. And I need you to just, I would have told that person that, I would have said a lot of swear words to them about like, get out of my face and stuff. But like, or I'm fine.
Right.
Okay, I will say this. The one thing I was, so as you know, there's a person in recovery that is, hopefully you find somebody who you can love and trust, and they're called your sponsor, and they walk you through a lot of things. Yep. And my first sponsor was magic. And she told me for my first, she said, you are banned. And like, you usually will do whatever they tell you to do. And I'm not there, but she's like, you are not allowed to say the words, I know. Oof. For a year.
Oof. Did you do it?
I did.
Okay.
And whenever I sponsor another woman in recovery, I'm always like, that's always a litmus for me. Cause I'm like, oh, I know. No, I know. No, I know. No, I know.
Yep.
I know. So how many times and I was.
If you know, why are you sitting here with me right now?
Right. If you could do your life better, why are you in that seat?
Yeah.
So I would be like, I would come up with workarounds. I understand. She's like, that's still the same. But I didn't realize how much I was keeping everybody at bay.
Right.
The good and the bad. By just saying, no, I know. I'm good.
Yeah.
I know. Work, personal. And so I'm like, I would go back to that brittle, barely holding it together, broken, hollow human. And I would just sit next to her and be like, it's going to be okay. And I don't know how to tell you this, but it's going to be better. Right.
It is. And is that the same advice you'd offer to somebody sitting in that situation right now? That you don't know, that isn't you?
I would. I think that so the other thing I learned is there's a difference between the golden rule and the platinum rule.
Say more.
The golden rule is treating others as you would like to be treated.
Yep.
Right? And the platinum rule is treating others as they need you to.
Yeah.
And so I'm also a recovering codependent fixer, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
And so, because that makes me feel good too. And so I now would not sit down next to somebody in a meeting and think I know what they needed. I would sit next to them and hold space.
Yeah.
And listen.
Yep.
That's one of the other things I think I've learned is nobody needs me to fix them. People just need you to hold space for them.
Yeah.
And people just need to be seen.
Yeah.
And then you might be the one person that they can be real or honest or vulnerable.
Yeah.
And even if it's just for a moment, and you can be like, I see you.
You witness them fixing themselves.
Yeah. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So I try to show up in a way. If I was in a meeting with somebody, I would be like, what's up, girl?
Yeah.
What's good and what's not? And I would just try and listen. And also the other thing I learned is that my scars are not something to hide.
Yeah.
My scars make me who I am. And there's, what's the name of it's a Japanese art form where broken dishes are put together with gold.
I know what you're talking about.
Ikigai?
Yes.
And I believe that. I believe the fact that our scars, if you look at skin and then you look at scar tissue is way stronger.
Yeah.
So if you look at it, you're like, my scars make me who I am.
Yeah.
And if I hide them, then that woman next to me doesn't know that I know what she's going through.
That's right.
And so another piece I think that I often attribute again to recovery is I have to share my story.
Yeah.
Because if I'm selfish and I don't share my story, then the next woman doesn't know that there's hope.
That's right.
And that there's you may, I mean, your story, you may have a different dismount, but your story is the same as me. We have made all the same ragged, poor decisions based on crap and there's hope.
That's right.
And life can get better. I mean, inside and out of recovery, but just having somebody sit with you and acknowledge your humanity is I cry when I drive around Seattle when I see so many people who are displaced and struggling, and whether it's housing or they're just having a day or it's substance or whatever. I cry in my car all the time because I'm like, God, how many people have just walked by that person?
Yeah.
And it's a safety issue, and I'm not trying to be a bleeding heart, blah, 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 but I'm like, most people just need to be seen.
Yeah.
I think.
Thank you for coming today and being so honest.
Thank you for having me.
And sharing that hope.
Yeah. Hope is always, my mom used to say, hope is the last thing to go. Let's hope it never leaves.
That's right. It's a perfect way to finish.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining me today.
Absolutely. I'm excited. Thank you for the gift of today.
Thank you.